اوكي، سامعيني ستودنتس؟
واضح
الى
الصوت.
الان يقطع.
اي واضح يا دكتور صوتك الحين.
الى الان يقطع الصوت.
يقطع ويرجع، يقطع ويرجع يا دكتور.
اوكي. لا انا النت عندي سريع جايز، النت عندي سريع.
المشكلة في البلاك بورد يمكن يا دكتور.
مش عارف صراحة. طيب shall we continue؟
اي الحين واضح يا دكتور عادي.
تمام، اذا قطع الصوت يا ريت تبلغوني عشان اعرف. اوكي تمام.
دكتور نوح عندي سؤال أنا.
يس يا العواد.
الحين يوم هو أنهاق، يوم قال to a green thought in a green shade، هل هو يقصد يعني إن العالم اللي يقصد هو يعني there is only one color, the green color only, when he said to a green thought in a green shade?
Actually, he celebrates the beauty of the green color here. The speaker celebrates the beauty of the green color. And by the way, the green color represents what? Represents what? It represents freshness، صح؟ لما يقول لك هذا عقله فريش اخضر، رايت؟ نقول اخضر، ها؟ واضح؟ حتى even in Arabic، صح ولا لا؟ حتى بالعربي even in Arabic we use the color green to refer to what? To freshness, right? Something that is fresh. You see the point? Are you following?
Yes.
Okay. Let us continue our discussion here. I have just said it seems that the Andrew Marvell was influenced with the ideas of Plato about the spiritual world, right? Because it was the Greek philosopher, actually, it was the Greek philosopher Plato who talked about that. Okay, let me explain to you in short. Plato said that whatever we have in the physical world is a copy of what we have in the spiritual world, in the transcendental world. You see the point? Are you following? The Greek philosopher Plato said that whatever we have in the physical world is a copy, is a shadow, is a replica, is an imitation of what we have in the transcendental or in the spiritual world. Now, he says that if we have a tree in the physical world, then this tree has its counterpart, its original in the transcendental or the spiritual world. You see the point? Is the idea clear, students, here? Okay. Now, it seems that Andrew Marvell, the speaker, says the same thing here. After falling on the grass, the mind of the speaker does not seem to be interested in the inferior things that we have in the physical world. So he starts contemplating, imagining other worlds, right? Other worlds, right? In the other worlds, where everything actually seems to be far superior to what we have in the material world. So the mind retreats what? Retreats or withdraws into a garden that seems to exist in a more beautiful world, a world that transcends, okay, what we have, that transcends, that is more beautiful than what we have in the material world. Okay. So meanwhile, the mind from pleasureless withdraws into its happiness. You get the point? Withdraws into its happiness. The mind can create a world and can feel more, can feel okay, can feel happy, can create its own happiness. The mind can create its own happiness through contemplating about other worlds and other seas, through contemplating, through imagining other worlds and other seas. Meanwhile, the mind from pleasureless withdraws into its happiness. The mind, that ocean, the mind is just like an ocean, right? Where each kind, you see, where each kind, yani everything that we have in the physical world has its counterpart actually in the spiritual or in the transcendental world. Okay, so what we have in the transcendental or the spiritual is more, is far superior, is more superior, is more beautiful than what we have in the physical. So the mind, that ocean, which where each kind does a trait, does a trait its own resemblance. You see, its own resemblance, its own counterpart, يعني شبيهة خلينا نقول, its own resemblance find. Yet it creates, transcending these, for other worlds and other seas, right? The mind starts imagining, it creates طبعا, okay, creates, imagines, okay, contemplates about other worlds and other seas. Okay. Annihilating all that's made to a green thought in a green shade. So the mind does 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 not, or does only seem to be interested, or does only seem to be interested actually in the color, in the green color. The mind does only seem to be interested in the green color. So it 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 uh, it gives rise to fresh, and what, to fresh thoughts. Actually, it gives rise to what, to fresh thoughts. Okay, in the shade طبعا, in the shade of what, of a tree. Okay, in the shade of a tree. Okay, so the mind can only feel happy, the mind can only feel happy in the shade, in the shade of what, in the shade of what, of a green, of a green tree. Okay. So meanwhile, the mind from pleasureless withdraws into its happiness. The mind, that ocean, where each kind does trait its own resemblance find. Yet it creates, transcending these, far other worlds and other seas, annihilating all that's made into, to a green, okay, to a green thought in a green shade. Yes. Any questions with regard to this stanza? If you have any questions about this stanza, students, any questions? Yes, any questions? Everything is clear. الشهري.
Yes.
Any questions? Yeah, الشهري. If you have any questions, anything you want to say?
No, thank you.
Yes. Okay, you are welcome. Okay.
So, Doctor,
Yes, yeah, Turkey.
so what he meant that there is a more beautiful copy of everything in the other world?
Yes, in a different word actually. In a different word actually, the speaker refers to the transcendental word, to the spiritual word, right? Not to the physical word. You see the point?
Oh, yes, yes.
Yes. Okay. طبعا, you know that keep in mind, students, that metaphysical poets are interested in the mind, not in the emotions. They are different from uh, uh, romantic poets. Okay, metaphysical poets are different from romantic poets, because they are interested in the mind, not in the emotions or in the heart. You see the point? So that is why the speaker refers to the mind creating its own word, imagining a different word. okay, where everything seems to be what, okay, seems to be what, perfect and superior طبعا to what we have in the to what we have in the material or physical world. Yes. Okay. Yes, any other questions? If you have any other questions. العصفور يا العصفور. يس يا العصفور، غرد لنا already، غرد لنا عن next stanza.
He is at the fountain sliding fruit, or some fruit trees mossy root, casting the body's fist aside. My soul into the boughs does glide. There are like a bird it sits and sings, and wit and comes its silver wings, until prepared for longer flight, waves in its plums the various light.
Okay, thank you so much, يا العصفور. Okay. So here are the fountains sliding foot. Here are the fountains sliding. Here طبعا in the garden, right? Here means in the garden. At the fountains sliding foot, near the fountains, يعني, right? Near the fountains. So here in the garden, near the fountains, sliding foot, or at some fruit trees, what? Mossy root. Mossy, it means covered in moss. Okay, covered in moss. اللي هو الطحالب. الطحالب. And you know that the moss is what? Is slippery, right? The moss is slippery, right? So here at the fountain sliding foot. Here in the garden, near the fountains, where the ground is slippery. Where the ground is slippery, right? Or at some fruit trees mossy or wood, or close طبعا, or close to the tree where the branches actually of the tree, or the trunks, if you want to say, okay, seem to be covered with moss and slippery. So here in the garden, near the fountains, where the ground seems to be what? Slippery, or at some fruit trees, or at the trunk يعني of a fruit tree طبعا, where the trunk, okay, seems to be what? Slippery. وأنا أذكر, I remember last time أنا I referred to this when I said إنه the trunk of the tree, if it's covered in moss, okay, it would be what? It would be what? Slippery. You see the point? The trunk of the tree, if it is covered in moss, it would be what? Slippery. Now here are the fountains. Here in the fountains طبعا, okay, sliding foot. Here يعني in the garden near the fountains, okay, where the ground seems to be slippery, or at some fruit trees mossy root actually, okay, at the trunk يعني, at the trunk of a fruit tree where where it seems to be what? Slippery, casting the body's vest. The body's vest. You know the meaning of vest, right? Al-Muktari, what is the meaning of vest? And Nahdi
سترة.
Turkey? Yes, يعني
Is it a
garment,
cape
right?
or
Huh?
a cape or a gown?
What's that?
Cape.
Cape?
Yes.
Give me the spelling.
I'm not sure, but 1 minute.
طيب حتى ما تعمل تشيك عليها تركي. vest يعني garment, right? vest garment, سترة زي ما صرف لنا المكتري.
Yes.
So casting the body's vest aside, my soul into the boughs does glide, into the branches يعني. So the soul releases itself of what? Of its garment. What is the garment of the soul? It is the body. It is the body. So the soul actually releases itself of the body and sits there in a tree like a bird. The soul releases itself of the body and sits there in a tree like a bird, casting the body's vest aside. My soul into the boughs, into the branches, does glide. Because we have just said that the branches are covered in moss and they are what? Slippery. Okay. So the soul here releases itself of the body and starts gliding. Okay, starts gliding upon the branches of a tree, of what? Of trees. Then it sits in the tree. Then it sits in the tree like a bird. There's like a bird. It sits and sings. After sitting in a tree, the soul, which is like a bird, starts singing, which shows actually how much it's happy, right? This is the green thought that we have just been talking about. This is a reference to the vigorous thoughts that we have just talked about. This is a reference to the fresh thoughts that we have just talked about. So my soul into the boughs, into the branches does glide, starts gliding. They're like a bird. It sits and sings, starts singing. Then wets, starts grooming yani, and combs its silver wings. We have just compared the soul to a bird sitting in a tree, sitting in a tree and singing. After sitting in a tree, starts singing and what? Wetting and combing طبعا its silver wings. wetting يعني اللي هو grooming او اللي بنسميه احنا تهذيب الريش. تهذيب or الريش. Then wets and combs its silver wings until prepared for longer flight. Waves in its plumes in its feathers يعني the various what? The various light. طبعا sitting in a tree like a bird, singing, grooming, wetting, combing its silver wings, preparing itself for what? Preparing itself for what? For a longer flight, right? Preparing for itself for a longer flight. So the soul is sitting in a tree like a bird, singing, feeling happy, wetting, grooming, combing its silver wings, combing its feathers, feeling fresh, having vigorous thoughts, and preparing itself for what? Preparing itself for a longer flight.